Welcome to This Week in Morgan County. I'm your host, Russell Mokhiber. Our guests this week are Kimberly Alexander and Aeryn Boyd. They are walking the length of the C&O Canal to draw attention to a process called hydraulic fracturing. And it surrounds Maryland. It's in Pennsylvania. It's in West Virginia. It's causing serious problems to drinking water and drinking water supplies. They want to ban fracking in Maryland. Maryland would be the first state to ban fracking if legislation passes next year. It's on the docket, and they're drawing attention to it. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, tell us how you got into this issue. Why are you doing this?
Well, I'm a permacultural farmer out in Friendsville, Maryland, and there have been several leases signed that are either expired or still active around my farm to hydraulically frack. And I am concerned that my springs and the two creeks that run through my property will be contaminated. And I need water to farm. So.
And Friendsville is in the far northwest corner of Maryland.
Yes.
So you're right up against the Pennsylvania-West Virginia borders.
Mm-hmm. And there are fracking wells in Addison, Pennsylvania that do have industrial waste spilling violations. So I'm concerned already about the quality of water and air around my farm. And Garrett and Allegheny counties are where fracking will begin if we allow it in Maryland. And so that's we're kind of in the ground zero because there's already infrastructure leading up to Friendsville. And
that's the Marcellus Shale.
Yes.
Right under West. I mean, if they're going to do it anywhere in Maryland, they're going to do it in Western Maryland.
But there are other, I think there's 4 shale basins in Maryland, and they are further east as well. And as you know, oil and gas could potentially seek out the oil profits downstate too, but they'll start out in Western Maryland where it seems most profitable and there's less people.
So it's a direct threat to you in Western Maryland. Aeryn, why are you interested in this?
Because I live on the planet and I drink water and I breathe air, and a lot of the communities. So in Maryland right now, hydraulic fracturing, this process that Kim's talking about of extracting the gas from the Marcellus Shale, that's not happening in Maryland. That's what we're hoping to ban. But what we do have right now is a lot of infrastructure. So in Myersville, there's a compressor station. In Brandywine, Maryland, there's natural gas power plants that are being proposed, and these things are also a direct they're a direct threat to the quality of life and the quality of health in those communities because of the toxins that are being released. And so for me, just as a human who is a steward of this planet and wants to leave a planet that's habitable for generations to come, if I want to have children, I want it to be a place that's safe and where they're not going to have to worry about contamination in their water. So for me, it's so important to prevent this issue before it starts in Maryland so that we can really get to the communities that are already being affected.
You started in Oakland, Maryland. You met a group of people yesterday in Hancock, Maryland, who are concerned, including myself, about the Columbia Gas pipeline, which I read this morning is actually not Columbia Gas of Maryland, but Columbia Gas Transmission, which is owned by TransCanada. And they want to build a pipeline under the C&O Canal, just a little bit west of where we were yesterday, under the Potomac River. Tell us your thoughts on what happened yesterday. More than 50 people joined you in protesting that.
It was beautiful. It was cross state boundaries, and I think that's something to be noted that pollution, water and air pollution don't stay within state lines. That it really takes all of us from all over the country, all over tri-state areas, if that's what it means for us right here, to come together and acknowledge that there are groups all over the place in different states and coming together to organize better and share information and know how we can show up for each other in different actions in different parts of the state and watershed. And
it's not
really
just
exciting. And
it's not just Hancock. I mean, you're seeing this as you walk. Tell us about what happened, Aeryn, in Frostburg, because there was a similar kind of thing.
Frostburg, for me, like I walked away from our experience in Frostburg knowing that we created living history, because there was over, Frostburg's a little town, it's a little college town, and there were over like 120 people that showed up to this little city council meeting to support a citywide ban in Frostburg. And these are people, again, like Kim is saying, yesterday was so profound because it wasn't a lot of people from Hancock that were there. It was people from out of the state, that are coming and supporting, and there was a lot of people in Frostburg that were coming from out of Frostburg to be there in support of this ban, because we realize that it's not a singular issue. It's not a compartmentalized issue. I mean, the water affects everyone. It flows. These communities, we're all facing these challenges. If you live on this planet, it's something to be concerned about. And
how many communities in Maryland have said we don't want fracking here?
A lot of them.
That's a good question. There are several counties and towns out in Garrett County. There's Friendsville and Mountain Lake Park, and potentially Frostburg. And I know of other towns that have asked for support and want more people to show up and help support their local bands. But downstate, where there's a lot more population, there are county-wide bans in Montgomery County, I believe PG County.
Baltimore's working on a ban.
Baltimore's working. There's a lot in motion right now. I know Frederick's working on a ban, so hopefully
and
we'll
in the
see
big
more
cities,
and
that's more symbolic, because you're not going to be doing fracking in big cities mostly.
But
it's like sending a message.
Because there is shale under some of these towns, and that's why they're banning, because they know that once industry gets their foot in the door, they really just can, they can do what they want, and they do what they want. And it hasn't been mentioned yet, but part of our walk, starting in Garrett County, where the wells begin, and ending at Cove Point, where our gas will be exported. We're following the gas and showing all that infrastructure and how there will be more infrastructure downstate too, not just out in Garrett County. And so this export facility is also being built by Dominion. It's the same company that built the compressor station in Myersville. And it's a $3.8 billion project that still hasn't received a quantitative risk assessment. And it's the only export facility of this size that has been built in a neighborhood of over 20,000 people.
Where is it again? Where, is it on the shore?
On the western shore of the Chesapeake Bay. And so, yeah, these people are also in need of help and need people to show up and help in whatever form.
Well, most people don't have, like here, we're organizing against the pipeline here in Morgan County. People have been told that this gas is actually for West Virginia. It's coming from the frack fields of Pennsylvania, under the C&O Canal, under the Potomac River, to hook up with a Mountaineer gas pipeline that will take it to Martinsburg in the Eastern Panhandle. But we don't know whether that's the case. Yeah. Gas prices are dropping. There's a lot of gas on the market. People are moving to alternative energy. Mm-hmm. It could be that it's just going to, especially since it's Trans-Canada, which is known for these monster ship lines that just ship it out of the country. It could be that it's just going to Cove Point.
Absolutely.
And that it will go for export.
To our worst trade partners. They've expanded the Panama Canal so that they can ship more things over to China, India, Japan, where we've signed contracts with them. So that's one of our biggest concerns, is that if this is our national security and we're destroying our water and air, which is our true national security, and we're taking this gas that we've extracted and selling it overseas, then what are we leaving for our children? Why don't, if it's really for our national security, then let's leave it in the earth, and when our children need it, then maybe extract it with a less hazardous method. Mm-hmm. Or we don't even need it, because we'll have alternative energy by then.
Now you say destroying water, and people throw around words like that, but you actually went to a town in Pennsylvania called Dimmock, Pennsylvania, mm-hmm. and you did a video. By the way, where, if people wanted to look up your information, where do they go, on Facebook or where?
Water Walk Maryland, Water Walk MD on Facebook.
Okay, and tell us what you found in Dimmock, Pennsylvania.
In Dimmock, we found, there was a family that we spoke with who did not sign a lease contract, and they didn't have a well pad on their property, and their water, their groundwater coming out of their water well was contaminated. It was like bright orange. There was stuff in it. We lit it on fire. This family was.
And that's in this video. It shows the farmer lighting the water. And
Right.
It's the Eli family.
Right.
And
Eli
it's
family.
one of 18 wells that were contaminated that supplied water to 19 families. There were more wells that were contaminated in that area, but that was in Dimmick Township specifically. And yeah, this family is tortured, and they have to go into town, collect their water, drive it back home, heat it up all winter so it doesn't freeze. And they've gone through over 8 years of lawsuits with Cabot Oil and Gas, to the point where they finally got Cabot Oil and Gas to sign a consent order agreeing that they contaminated the water. And immediately after the court case, they started to celebrate, and Cabot Oil and Gas came up and said, hey, we're appealing the case. So again, they didn't get their $4.1 million. They didn't get their water cleaned and treated. So they're up against the lawsuit again. And that's a big problem. I mean, these industries have huge amounts of money, and it's endless. They could keep it in court for the rest of their lives, and they'll never see water again. You know, they can't, the water that's contaminated, they can't use in their toilets because it's off-gassing chemicals, and they can't shower in it. They got rashes and
You get headaches, nausea using this water because of how many toxins are in it.
And clearly you can't drink it. So they're forced to water buffalo their water into their house. And you know, these are families. These are people who are terrified to swim in their creeks. And it's a lot of psychological damage, not just the financial issues of driving your truck into town and getting water every week and heating it. You know, like there's more to it.
Yeah, with Dimmick, what was interesting to experience being in the township is that the only change that you could really tell has like happened and boomed in that area is fracking. There's well pads everywhere. There's a big brand new Cabot Oil and Gas headquarters in the town. But the township, the actual, the local businesses, a lot of them were still very small, shut down. Not a lot of change is happening. There wasn't a lot of this big boom in terms of the community, or just the experience of the town, other than fracking. It was just fracking everywhere. Nothing else had really been invested.
And did you leave the C&O Canal to go there, or did you go before?
We went before.
Before you started.
And we have a bottle of contaminated well water that we're bringing to the governor to share with him and show him the contrast of the choices we have right now. We can have clean spring water or this fracking brine.
Speaking of the governor, give us the reality, give us the legislative reality of, I know it's coming up in like January before the legislature in Annapolis, and spoke yesterday at the Hancock things, very informed people from, I think it's Don't Frack Maryland and Citizen Shale, who know the ins and outs of the legislation and so forth. But give us your sense as to what are the chances of this legislation passing and being signed by the governor, who tends to be more conservative?
Well, from the last I heard, the governor stated that it's not up to him to put in a ban bill. It's up to the legislative session, and
but it's up to him to sign it.
Exactly.
Or veto it.
But him saying that, it's like, okay, well, if you guys can get this bill through, then to me that meant he was considering signing it. He can't do it alone. He needs us to push it through.
And they say he wants to be reelected to a second term, so he might be putting his finger to the wind and saying, if the people want this.
And he's also healing. He's healing from leukemia, I believe, a form of cancer. So I think he understands that that's not a reasonable risk to expose Marylanders to. I think he feels that in his heart. So.
Yeah, for me, there's a lot of hope going into the legislation next year, with all of these smaller ban efforts happening in Maryland. So again, Frostburg being, a city ban that they were proposing. Frederick's working on one. Baltimore is working on one. Montgomery County already has one. Friendsville, the city of Friendsville, has one. And so as all of these smaller localized bans happen, the people, and the momentum, the support that we have going into the legislative session is just getting stronger and stronger and more unified as the people are really speaking up and letting the government know in Maryland we don't want fracking. We want a ban, and we want renewable energy. So I'm really hopeful and really excited.
That being said, part of the fracking ban bill, legislators have asked, okay, well, we need an alternative bill to show, well, if we're taking this away from our, if we're taking this industry away from Western Maryland, really all of Maryland, then we have to replace it with something. And so we're also, while researching and understanding the harms of fracking, we're also trying to research and understand the benefits of alternative and energy and how to make that possible and subsidize that instead of oil and gas. So there's a lot going on right now, and it's really exciting, and I think we're going to do it this spring.
We're going to do it.
One of the things that struck me yesterday in Hancock, there were a lot of young people there. And I'm wondering your insights as to people, when you talk to young people, they sort of get angry at our generation for putting them in this situation. But they also seem at a loss on what to do. And you guys are actually taking action, direct action, to bring attention to this. So I'm wondering about your transformation from observers into actors and how it happened.
We need leadership. We need people willing to say, this is the most important thing to do right now because of how dangerous it is. And so for me, I feel like it's been, it's again, so much inspiration. It's so awe-inspiring because it's not just the younger generation. It's like Frostburg. Another reason why Frostburg was such a profound part of this walk for me was because there were people of every age there. Everyone was represented. People from the school were there. Lots of students were there. The older generations who grew up in Frostburg were there. There were children. Everyone was represented because this affects everybody. And so, yeah, I feel like as we just continue to see more leaders rise, more people willing to speak and to take direct action to create conversations around these issues, it just, again, it's more momentum building. It's more opportunity for people to start learning and to start having more of their own say in how they want the future to look for themselves and for their children.
All right, but let's do, so we have a few minutes left though. Let's get into the details a little bit. You take a swath of young people and they're playing their Xbox or sitting at home wondering what to do, and you guys are in the minority.
Oh.
In terms of action, is that right? Or not?
I think we're just container makers. We're just providing a space for people to show up. And as we keep doing that and we keep going to different communities and we keep saying, hey, there's something really cool happening here. Come to an event, come learn, come experience something else. Experience permaculture, experience the Potomac River, and just getting people together. It just builds a network. And all we have to do is just show up and say, hey, we want to talk about this. Here's an opportunity to do that.
But even more is actually engaging. And I hear you. People are sitting in front of their TVs, and there's a true cost to that convenience to be able to just sit and relax and not do anything. And that's our happiness, and that's our health. And so to engage in a way where we can, in permaculture is what I'm looking at. This walk is permaculture, because we are literally going out and planting seeds of this paradigm shift towards a more earth-friendly practice and recognizing the importance of water. And so when people come out and engage in these actions, you get to feel how wonderful it is to be a part of your community and how wonderful it is to connect with the earth.
And how motivating it is. And
I think the more people can get outside and engage in their food production, engage in just anything outside of themselves, you just feel so good. And that's what I envision as our future, is more people understanding that our food production is most important that we engage in, so that we can be outside and we can eat from the earth and be together and talk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but what I want to get to is a little bit like this. So let's do a little bit of this. And give me a little of your life history. Which way, where were you born? What was the work of your parents? Where did you go to formal school? And how you ended up like that. So let's hear from each of you.
So I grew up near DC, and it was pretty terrifying, just gangs and stuff. And I was pretty shy and quiet, and wound up in the mountains a lot with my parents. We were outdoors a lot, and ended up going to school at Garrett College and got an associate's degree in adventure sports. And one of the last classes I took was called Society and the Environment. And I learned a lot about our impacts on the environment and how other cultures were living and were fine and healthy and happy without all of this stuff. And shortly after that, after adventures on the ocean and nearly dying and having these real potent experiences with the earth that just thrusted me into more action. I need to do something with purpose. I wound up on Pick Up America, and we were walking across the country, picking up trash, raising awareness around our disposable culture, talking of zero waste. And after that ended, I ended up in India with another founding mother of Pick Up America, studying how performing arts affects social change. And that's essentially what this is. This is a walking performance across the state. And that was really inspiring to see.
There's like a Gandhian thing, like movements against, for political power. Is that where you learned it, or?
I mean, more so just really performing arts can be anything. It can be yoga, it can be walking, it can be farming, it can be dancing, puppetry, and there's so much involved in that. And so from there, I worked on several farms in India and started realizing that, you know, our food production is the biggest issue. It's petroleum based right now, and it can't be. It's killing our soil and destroying our water. So, and creating dead zones in the ocean. So all of this was like, wow, this is important. So I started farming in Friendsville, Maryland, and yeah, so I'm here walking to protect the water again.
Okay. Now another, Aeryn, your history.
Yeah, I grew up in Columbia, Maryland, in Howard County, which is, you know, a planned community. Like Columbia was, you know, it's a really interesting place. My parents got divorced when I was really young, so I grew up just, you know, eating the school lunches and like not having a connection to the land very much. When I moved to California when I was 18, I lived there for about 6 years, and that's where I really began to get connected to nature. You know, growing up, I watched a lot of TV. You know, that was how my family bonded. And living in California, really, as I became connected to to more of my surroundings and the value of growing your own food and learning these natural practices, I became very aware of the concern around water, because California has a serious drought. And I would, you know, driving through California, you know, there's in Bakersfield, California, you can see farms and behind them are fracking rigs. And, you know, so that to me became very scary, was to recognize what the current state of our industry is in terms of not just the oil and gas production, but also our food industry, you know, all of these different components. I moved back to Maryland about 2 years ago and was able to get involved with a community that was working on permaculture, and, you know, I built a community garden with my homeowners association in Columbia, Maryland, which is really exciting, and just got more involved in the solutions. You know, we really see these as like the solutions on the water walk. And so this opportunity came about to, you know, I realized this is what we're doing right now is we're preventing this issue by raising awareness to it now, rather than trying to fight the industry once they've got their foot in the door.
And clean up after them.
So for me now, it's part of that purpose, is that I have to preserve these resources by performing for them and for the people and you know, creating a space so that we can learn.
Well, thank you very much both for doing this. If people again want more information, it's Water Walk Maryland on Facebook or wherever else, or just type it into Google, it'll come up. And there's a lot of information about that. There's a multi-statewide movement against fracking in these pipelines. So good luck to you on the rest of the trip.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And thank you for watching This Week in Morgan County.